Hey everybody, welcome back to another awesome episode of the Creative Collective where we are wealth forged creatively. I'm sorry. It's a new slogan, guys. Um but anyways, we have tonight a very special guest for you, my friend Reed Clanahan. Reed is a rock star in the co-living space and he's just knocking it out of the park. He's going to share all of his gold with us so we can basically take over in our areas, right? Take over the co-living space. Reed is pretty seasoned, right? He's got a bunch of deals going on. I don't know exactly how many. We'll ask him here in a minute, but Reed, welcome to the Creative Collective, man. How's it going tonight?
Thank you. Yeah, it's going great. I appreciate you guys having me, and I'm excited to dive in and learn more about what you guys are doing, and of course support with hopefully good information however I can. So looking forward to it.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming. Can you let's start off just telling us a little bit about yourself, man. Where you from? What you did maybe prior to real estate?
Yeah, well, I guess go way back before the last like 4 or 5 years of doing co-living, and since then I've kind of put my blinders on. But give you a little bit of backstory. So I'm born and raised in Oklahoma. Very, I guess, traditional family in that way, and that was great. But then grad school I ended up doing at the University of Florida, so it was good to get out and kind of go do my thing. I actually ended up on assistantship because my background was in wellness. I was a trainer for a number of years, instructor, whatever else. Ended up managing part of the fitness program at UF, and they paid for my grad school, so that was a great couple of years. Got my MBA specifically in entrepreneurship during that time period, and like I said, had it all paid for in that regard. So been doing no money out of pocket on for a while. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, since then, I've worked on a handful of startups. It was wellness related, then it was real estate related, and I was a realtor for about 3 years up in Denver. I've lived a little bit of everywhere. Now, I've lived in Texas, lived in Florida, lived in Arizona. I now have my homestead here in Colorado, which feels really good in Southern Colorado. And I'll just travel to my markets about once a month. And yeah, fast forward, obviously all the lessons learned of, being young 20s and, getting, your teeth kicked in and all this kind of stuff from just going through it, which I think is very valuable. Fast forward, I really, like I said, I put my blinders on about 4 or 5 years ago, because as you guys know, there are too many ways to win in real estate. So,
Mhm.
you hear about somebody that does Airbnb arbitrage, and they're also trying out this gator lending thing, and they're also trying something else. It's just like, honestly, like once you really figure out what your kind of thing is, it's just really getting focused in that regard. And yeah, I started doing co-living in Phoenix originally. I was working a W-2 job. I was coaching a bunch. I was coaching as a W-2 job before I, really started going co-living. I was coaching a bunch of different fitness franchise owners from the time that they signed a franchise agreement all the way through getting their doing their build out, getting ramped up, marketing, and then becoming profitable. Did that for a while, which was great. That being said, after I got into my first few co-living deals, and I actually sold one, and I started looking at, okay, what I made on that first co-living deal that I ended up selling, because I actually used Gator funds. I didn't know it was called that at the time. Squeezed out a good chunk of equity, and I looked at what I was making per year, and I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, one of these things took a lot of my time, and one of these things didn't. And so,
Mhm.
I quit the W-2 job, a few years ago, and now I'm invested in primarily still some in Phoenix, Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, San Antonio, and I built out a bit of a team. It didn't happen overnight. I've got about 7 full-time construction guys in DFW who will travel for me as needed, and then I've got about 6 virtual assistants that are doing everything from my back office to helping me with marketing to vendor management, like you name it. And so, I get a lot done. Thankfully, as much as I can be, I'm more of an overseer, right? Just making sure that the things
Mhm.
are getting done.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, with scale, obviously, it takes a bit to get there. But it is much easier nowadays where I can, if I get a new property in, I can grab that listing link, I can grab the information, I can send it to them and say, hey, go do all the things that you know to do, which is create the listings, which
Mhm.
is set into motion whatever we need to order for that listing. And usually within a couple of days, I mean, we're already, framing out bedrooms. We're really making it happen as far as that goes. So I feel like it was really interesting in the last year or so, because I was like, okay, let's focus on doing a couple a month, and then as we've
Mhm.
continued to grow, the idea is just obviously I love to keep doing deals. That's fantastic. But it's almost like I've got this construction crew and I want to keep them busy as well. So, obviously got to make sure that, everything else is continuing to go,
Mm.
right alongside that as well. So,
Wow, that's impressive, man. So like you are, there's a lot to unpack there, like Damon would say, right? You've got you're scaling, you've got a construction crew, you're hands-on, but you're not completely hands-on, right? So you're pulling yourself out, right? Is what it sounds like. And so what how many of these deals do you have under your belt right now currently? How many co-living
uh,
properties do you have?
after tomorrow, I'll be at 25 total
Nice.
units.
Wow, that's great, man.
Thank you.
That's great. That's impressive, man. I love it. I love what you're doing. I just got my first one under contract. I think I was telling you before we recorded, so that I'm really excited about it myself. And I love the space, and I'm really going to be focusing on co-living as well. I think, somebody referenced it as the short-term rental of 10 years ago, right? Like it's going to be in such high demand because of the housing shortage that we have, So you're not only, making 5 times more than you would on a long term, plus you're also filling a need in the community wherever you're at. So those are two reasons why I really love it. And
Completely.
yes, you
Well,
know what
and
I mean?
absolutely. And just to add on to that too, is
Mhm.
I think people need to, I mean, there's obviously many ways to get into your first co-living deal, but people need to, I think, understand also, it's like, not only are you doing co-living, right, which is, I mean, I could talk about that for, a long time, but it's stabilizing itself along the way. And if you lose one or two tenants, your whole ship didn't sink, right? As far as
Mhm.
like the rental is concerned. So I think it's a little bit more risk adverse in that regard. And then when you combine that with seller financing or subject to, right,
Mhm.
subject to the existing financing, you combine controlling appreciating assets in a inflationary environment with low fixed interest rate debt, and then you combine that with the cash flow of co-living. I mean, that's really where I feel like kind of my niche is within that. And obviously there's a lot to be said for those two strategies, I think.
Absolutely. Damon, did you want to hop in here, brother? I see you unmuted.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, man. I'm in my car, so I'm also like you converting quite a few of my spaces over to the co-living model, right? So, um, I think what I'm interested in and what I've wondered, right, as I've kind of ventured into this, is I see a lot of people doing, like Lance said, the short-term rental in the co-living space, which I don't know if I'm totally on board with yet, right? I think I'm more lean towards low income housing in the co-living space. Because if I can create, let's say, 10 rooms in a house, and I can charge $750 a month on that, right? It makes sense if I'm on a $2,500 to $3,000 mortgage, right? So I don't know what your thoughts are there. I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are, because I think one of the things I'm interested in is, everybody's using pad split or talking about pad split. And I'm like, well, pad split seems interesting, but I'm having to give up 15% of my, overall to them. And I don't know if I'm on board with that, because I feel like much like you, I've got construction crews and I've got these guys that I keep busy. but I've also got property management as well. So if you can develop, a property management company out of that too. But anyways, I know there's a lot to unpack there, but I'd love to hear
Yeah.
your thoughts on it.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I guess just for starters, anybody that's newer to co-living or hearing the words pad split or have heard that in the past and thought that every co-living property was called a pad split, right? Because we tend to use that word as an adjective. I think that that's a really important distinction is like pad split has existed for a while, but they did not exist. I mean, they did not invent co-living is what I should say. And so I think that's a really important distinction. And you absolutely can do the marketing on your own. I would say if you want to use Pad Split, just be prepared that it's a marketing platform. It's a marketplace. They have good tech. The tech is good, but they're not a full service property management company, right? And so with that, it's like, is it worth 15% for them to send leads your way? I mean, what I'm finding is that I'm getting probably 15% higher per bedroom rent price out in the marketplace marketing on my own. It's a lot of hustle, a lot of conversations, a lot of a lot of time, a lot of volume that most people aren't willing to put in to really get that going, especially if it's your first few and you're not trying to throw an ad spend budget at it. And I'm not just talking to you, Damon. I'm just kind of talking more generally to everybody.
Sure, sure, sure.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that there's something to be said for any time that you're buying one of these properties. Think about effectively what you're doing is you're taking something that would have been a long-term rental, maybe one person, and may have cash flowed 2, 3, $400 a month, and you're now adding 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 new lower price point offerings into the market that didn't exist before, right? So you're literally pulling value out of thin air by your creativity and your ability to go execute on these things. And so I think that there's a lot to be said for that. And it's like from the renter's perspective, there's way more renters that can pay 700, 800, $1,000 for a bedroom. The buyer pool is just much bigger than there are the people that, can afford 2, 3, 4 grand a month in rent. And it's just like, I think that as we continue to go into the environment that we're in, we're only going to see more of those people that are looking to save some money on rent, that are looking for something that's probably somewhat flexible, even though because we live in a non-committal society, right? But even though like for me, I used to only do when I first started, only do $500 security deposits, 6-month leases, and everything. And what's funny is even though I am a little bit more flexible now, I still when I if I on my ads and everything that's kind of out there, I still try to anchor in 6 months, $500 security deposits. So when we say, hey, we can actually do month to month, but we're not looking for fly by night, people, the idea is that we want to create some adhesiveness of, people that are actually in the space, like in the house, because focus on working class professionals. Yep. I love it. That's exactly right, Lance. So, I love the folks that are warehouse workers. Maybe they work for FedEx. Maybe they work on an oil rig and they're here for 2 weeks on, and then they have a house up north and then they're 2 weeks off or whatever it is, right? I love the construction worker, maybe first sales job out of college. Inevitably, you find the people that are divorced and they just lost everything or whatever else, and need that lower price point offering to kind of weather the storm there. But yeah, I mean, I am being more flexible because I'm trying to lower the barrier of people saying yes, getting people into rooms because we're doing such volume now. But I'm still anchoring that 6 month because I don't even want to have a conversation with somebody because frankly, it's not worth it. Because I want to have a conversation that someone that ends up staying for a year, they're paying $800 a month. That's 10 grand a year practically to you. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you get a mortgage and all that stuff, but you get my point. It's like having a conversation with someone for a month, it's just not worth it, frankly. So,
Well, man, I mean that's awesome knowledge for me, obviously, to gain with what I'm doing right now, and it lets me know that I'm not crazy to think the way that I am. And
Right.
funny enough, I actually
Hmm.
see quite a few of these folks that I think went in thinking that pad split was going to be the overlying alternative for them, and now I see
Yeah.
these houses up for sale, right? And so, yeah, I love the fact that somebody
Mhm.
is thinking along the
Yeah.
lines that I am, but I also have another thought for you. And when you go looking for these houses, right? We know some of these other folks in the space, like Sam Wiegert, and but I'd like to hear, like, what are your thoughts? Maybe back up, right? But before we get into the weeds on all this, what are your thoughts when you go looking for these houses? What type of house are you looking for? Like, what general square footage on rooms, so that people, who are interested in this might be able to actually gear a search, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a couple of distinctions I'd like to make there. I'm actually I was on Sam Wiegert's podcast a few weeks ago. I don't know if he pushed that out just yet.
Nice.
Um, but I feel like and like everybody's different about their approaches and everything. So you guys are going to hear the way I think about it, my approach, but it's not everybody's approach, right? So I guess just to talk about the buy box, and then I'll dive into that. But the buy box is within about 30 minutes of a major metropolitan area. I think that covers up a lot of sins when it comes to you being a new co-living operator and maybe not having that plumber at 12 o'clock at night when you had that issue or whatever the situation is. I feel like there's just the population helps kind of forgive a lot of sins in that regard. So within about 25, 30 minutes of a major metropolitan area, I'm looking for at least this isn't hard and fast, but I'd say 16, 1700 or more square feet. If it's a 3-2, I want a garage. If it's a 4-2, it's nice if it has a garage, but you can probably make it work. Ideally, I want it to be much bigger than that. It's all going to depend on what the carrying costs are, right? The PITI, what your, if there's an HOA at all, but what your total carrying costs are for that place. And for me, I've like I said, I've kind of put my blinders on. There's some people that really want to go deeper with the construction and everything. I like to look at these a little bit more like I want it to be turnkey, no big ticket items, roof, plumbing, electrical, like nothing like overly exorbitant with the big ticket items. A little bit cosmetic, that's fine. But all that to say is to answer your question, 1,700 square feet or higher. If it's in an HOA, there's no rental restrictions. If it is, one of the things I'm looking for is parking, especially if there's an HOA,
Mhm.
is because you don't want to piss off the neighbors, right? You don't want to give anybody reasons to be whatever to have an issue with anything that you're doing as far as that goes. So I love it when they're on a corner unit, they're on like a corner of a street, right? Because you got parking on both sides. I'm looking for long stretches of parking. I'm looking for cul-de-sacs, and frankly I like the neighborhoods that have I don't know, the guy who is clearly a working class guy that has a trailer in the street. Maybe there's an RV nearby. Maybe someone hadn't cut their lawn, whatever else. It's not that we want to do those things. We just want to give people the fewest amount of reasons to ever have an issue with what we're doing too. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And so, are you mainly looking for off market, on market? And I think I probably know the answer to this, but I think that's good for everyone to know because once you do get all of these rooms rented out, let's be honest, an on market deal right now at 8%, it really doesn't matter, right? I
Well,
mean,
yeah,
in terms of just the overall pity, right, for the month, right?
yeah. There, I hate to keep going super long winded on you here, but I'd love to kind of parse out
No,
that.
please do. Yeah, please
Okay.
do.
So I would say that if you're looking on market, you can make those work, right? With realtors, right? That, they have a place that didn't sell and it's an expired, about to be an expired listings. And you found a way to educate that realtor around subject to. That's fantastic when you can do that. We work with realtors all the time. We just have to factor it into our total entry fee to get into the deal, right? The other piece of it is if you're talking about on market, specifically if you're talking about using outside conventional financing, so your Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, you're going and you're originating a new loan, right? That if we're talking about on market in that regard, to whatever house that you're going to buy, to that seller, to that end seller, wherever you're going to go, that's as good as cash. So I'm not saying I like to use conventional financing. I don't love paying points. I don't love paying all the things that, really add up to your total entry fee. What I am saying, if the people are already in that mindset, you can still make it work with 7 or 8% debt. You just want to be aware that you can probably be a little bit more selective than you would be with a subject to transaction. Subject to
Mhm.
is as much about the house practically as it is about the underlying financing, right? If you're getting outside financing and you're going to on-market properties, it's as good as cash to that seller. You can probably actually negotiate down price a little bit. You can be a little bit more selective because they're getting even if it's not cash, they're getting all of that cash up front. So you can be a little bit harder to work with. With subject to, you want it to hit your buy box numbers, and if it is, it's a deal. I think you should move on it. And you should know what a deal is for you. But at the same time, beggars can't be choosers in a way, um, because you can't always predict exactly where that subject to deal is going to happen, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, it totally does. And what do you think about, let's talk to maybe the first time purchaser, right? Well, maybe they can't find the sub two deal, or maybe they go through a wholesaler and find the sub two deal. I think those are viable options too. But I've thought about DSCR loans, right? Where, you know, maybe you're first time buyer, you just want to, get in and get started, and then you can create the cash flow, right? So maybe like a DSCR loan on your first one, and then you maybe come in, because we know that the market is going to change here 24, 25. You're probably going to see 4 or 5% interest rates. So if I buy now with 7.5, 8% DSCR loan, and then I turn around in a few months and I refi, well, that makes a pretty decent deal. Make your entry into that back, right? And then maybe go look for those sub two deals with wholesalers or whatever. I, I just, I'm picking your brain, man. I hate to keep beating that horse to death, but yeah.
There's some really good ways of thinking about it, because with the DSCR loan, again, you're using outside financing. You're getting to be more selective with the house itself. That being said, 20% is usually what let's say 10 or 20%, if you're finding a good lender, is usually what they're looking to put down, right? But 20, and then if you have to add renovation costs, add holding costs, add furnishings, all of this, you're talking about a pretty good chunk of change to get into
Yeah.
your first one. But to your point, just getting started is the biggest thing, right? It's like, whether it's your money or somebody else's money, just getting started and getting into it, you now have something you can trade with later when rates do drop. To your point, exactly what you're saying there. That being said, obviously there's other loan products you can do, 3 and 5 and 10% down. You just got to qualify for it. Obviously, if you're an entrepreneur, you're not quite as bankable in that regard, and so it's a little bit more challenging. But you can do that. But as far as you mentioned something else, uh, trading up basically when rates drop, right?
Right. Yeah. So let's just say, right, for figurative, talk, you get into a house and you use a DSCR, maybe it's 20% down, you get 7 rooms out of it. Let's say out of those 7 rooms, you're, I don't know, creating 700 or 800 bucks a month, something like that. For these folks that are just trying to rush and get in, you get in, and you use that cash flow. Don't turn, don't go out and spend it. You take that cash flow, you save it, and then pay yourself back basically off of the exponential cash flow and comparative to just a long-term rental. And then you can, turn around and maybe use that for an entry fee on a sub two deal, right? Like, but in just getting that cash flow started. But then I'm also going to ask you after this, man, about the sub two deals, because I'm interested there on how you're structuring and getting into them. But I think I'm just talking about maybe the first time buyer that tries to jump on a deal, right?
Well, I would, yeah, I would say get in however you can. Where they're printing money right now, right? So these are
Yeah,
all
yeah.
These are all appreciating assets. And so even if you think your money is going to be worth less, the house is going to be worth more, however you square that off as far as the value, I think it makes sense to get started. And so I like the action takers. I would say if you're just getting going, before we hop into the sub two stuff, if you're just getting going, you got to understand that what we're going to talk about with the subject two stuff, that's been many years of skill stacking, right? It's like, okay, how do I talk to a seller? And if you don't talk to a seller, how do I work with wholesalers? Okay, there's many skills that kind of lead to be able to do some of these more advanced strategies. But if you're just getting started, I mean, maybe look up rental arbitrage. You can find a seller or like an owner of a place that's using it as a long-term rental. You can give them as long-term rental rate, or even slightly above that, or even a percentage of what you can do with it. You can hold your own insurance. You can be very professional with how you do it. Rental arbitrage can help you get it very little money out of pocket to get started. And then I would also look at lease purchases, right? So someone that lets you, not one of these lease purchases that maybe comes from some of these real estate groups, so they want a lot of money down. But, you know, one of my first deals was like $5,000 down to get into a lease purchase. And then I used that cash flow and experience to, you know, later then, you know, finance into the properties. And so I would just, you know, I think one of the best rules of entrepreneurship is use what you have, kind of where you're at, right? And so I would say as you're first getting into it, maybe look at some of those strategies. And then if you can qualify for some of those conventional loans, again, it's just get in however you can. But then also realize that if you're going to use a conventional loan, be slightly more selective with how and where and which property you buy and kind of what deal you take. Don't just take any deal. But yeah, I can stop there, or do you want me to kind of dive into?
No. I think that's great, right? Because that kind of leads us in, and that's where I was headed with it. Is, well, you know, if you're just starting out, there are those options, but now let's talk about, you know, you and where you're at, and you're a little more seasoned now. You've skill stacked, which I love that terminology, right? Like, because that's truly what it is. Like, you're learning construction, you're learning sub two, seller finance, you know, many, you know, talking to wholesalers. There's many different skill sets there. But let's talk about the sub two deal, how you go out and you look at that, you look for the right sub two deal. And then let's talk about how you actually get into the sub two deal. Like, you know, are you using a private money lender? Are you, you know, like, walk us through what a typical sub two deal might look like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk about some of the nuances as I go, but I'll give you some frameworks for how I look at them. Anybody that's newer that's looking to get into this, or that has a certain buy box with subject to deals. I'd say it's good to have a box, but no two deals are the same, right? Like, because I usually try to keep my entry fees, let's say less than $35,000 for me to get in cash to close, right? Let's just say on average. And then, but that being said, if you've got 40 or 45K sitting around and you found a deal that had $100,000 in equity in it, you might reconsider exactly what you're looking at. So I'm going to give some generalities as far as how I look at them. But, you know, just realize that, you know, these aren't hard and fast rules, and everybody's a little bit different for how they look at these. But yeah, generally speaking, as far as the subject to deal is concerned, part of what I'm looking for is, of course, that buy box info that you heard before, but obviously the underlying financing on it as well is super important. So, like I said, let's say 30 to 40,000 total cash to close, and I want my PITI. I can do as high as, let's see here. What's your market? Okay, cool. I think Lance is keeping the conversation rolling in the chat. I love it. So, you know,
Yeah, I'm in Houston. I'm in Houston. Let's take Houston, for instance,
okay.
because you're there too.
Yeah, Houston's great. Houston is going to be a slightly different market than like a Dallas or a San Antonio, for example. You can still find really great deals. You know, you might have a slightly higher, you know, entry fee. and you might have a slightly higher holding cost than you would in like a San Antonio, but probably less than like you would in like a Dallas Fort Worth. And you're probably, I mean, if you're in San Antonio at all, you're going to have to find a way to work with HOAs. You can find a low key HOA with no rental restrictions, but pretty much everywhere in Houston is going to have an HOA. I mean, am I right? Is that what, I mean, that's what you see too.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that being said, you know, I would say for a place like Houston, I would try to keep my PITI right around or below 2,700. If it's really big house, maybe consider a little bit more, but your per bedroom rent price is probably going to be about 15% lower than what you're going to have in DFW. But you can probably get a lower entry fee. You might not take on quite as high as a PITI. And for anyone that's not familiar, that's, you know, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Basically, what are my holding costs before I get to utilities and kind of all the other things. And so the big part of what I'm looking for on my per bedroom rent price, and we're going down some rabbit holes here, and I know we can kind of back up and talk about the subject to nature of this, but as far as the per bedroom rent price, I would typically look at for my master bedroom, hopping on any of these apartment.com, rental cafe, any of these sites where you can figure out what an average one studio bedroom apartment to go for in the area, and then take about 65% of that. And then maybe for your shared bathroom bedroom scenarios, maybe take about 10 or 15% off of that. So maybe in San Antonio, in Houston, we're talking about 700, 750. If it's a nice house, really nice house, 800 for a shared bedroom, and then closer to 1,000, maybe just slightly over it for a master bedroom that has its own private bathroom. And so that's ballpark what I'm looking for there. Houston is, I feel like a little bit of a different market because you have so many, we're talking about working class folks. There's so many industrial type plants. NASA's there. A lot of engineers are there. And
Well,
so
yeah, one of the things, not to interrupt, sorry, man. Yeah, one of the things with Houston is like you go from North Houston down to South Houston. It's like two different countries, right? Like, yeah. So yeah, it's a really varied area, and I'll agree with you. Like, rents can literally fluctuate heavily from North Houston to like South Houston, right? Yeah.
you bet. You bet. And I found
Mhm.
with like San Antonio, for example, there's a lot of homes with very, very new product and a lot of loans that were originated about 3 or 4 years ago. So you're finding really low interest rates, but you have to accommodate that and realize that you need a lower PITI because the rent rates might be slightly lower than like a Dallas or Fort Worth, right? And then Dallas and Fort Worth, there's so much product that's been around for years and years. I feel like as far as finding good chunks of equity, if that's what you're after, I'm mostly after cash flow, but good chunks of equity, you can find that in Dallas often. And these aren't mutually exclusive. I'm just giving you some generalities as far as the way that I see it. But to back up and kind of go back to the subject to transaction. So let's just say $35,000 on the cash to close. And for anybody that isn't familiar with cash to close, that's just like, what do I need to get into it? Close with the title company and the house is mine. And then thereafter, right? Like if it's something's 35,000, I'm probably raising more like 70 or 75,000 for my total entry fee. I call that the entry fee, not the 35,000. I call the 35,000 cash to close. That's what it takes to get into it. My entry fee though should include everything from renovations to holding costs to furnishings, etc. And so that's ballpark where I'm at. And I've raised that money a few different ways. And so I guess who's mostly in our group here, and who listens to this? Is it investors? Is it newbies? I guess I don't want to throw out too much
Yeah,
terminology.
Mostly investors.
a
Yeah.
little bit of everybody. Yeah, a little bit of everybody. It's
Yeah.
investors, yeah, yeah, don't feel like you have to
Okay.
draw back at all. Like, feel
Yeah.
free to expand. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So I'd say three different categories that I would throw the money into. It would be, there's gators, right? There's shorter term, as you guys know, lending. And we'll get to hopefully Jesse's question here in a bit, by the way.
Yes.
So there's gator lending, which is short term here. There's PML, so private money lending, right? And then there's equity partners. And that's kind of the sequence of how long people want to keep their money in the deals, right? Gators want to be in and out. Private money lenders, maybe you can find one for a year, 2 years, 3 years. And then, PMP, so private money partner and equity partner, for example. I'd say I'm mostly seeking those out because I'll do like a 50-50 split where I'm 100% of the execution, they're 100% of the capital. I actually make money when I buy because whoever's buying into these deals with me is getting the benefit of economies of scale, right? With the softwares, with the systems, with the marketing, like all that kind of stuff. So I'm incentivized to keep buying and getting these things rented up because we can keep doing that. And so I do 50-50 on that. If I'm raising that 75K, if I'm looking for PML, I've done 12 to 15% even. And the idea is to exit them by either doing a HELOC or whatever else at some point. And then I've even, just to get into the deals, I've used Gator funds. So Gator funds, usually people talk about Gator and that's more transactional lending. So this kind of creeps into PML as well. But Gator funds for this purpose is, 3 to 6 months. I feel like the percentages that these Gators are getting used to is absorbing.
It's pretty high. Yeah, I know.
Ridiculous.
They're spoiled. Spoiled.
Yeah, I know. So, but I've used it and I've gotten them great returns and then just replaced it later on with a PML or then an equity partner. And, it's just to help you get it stabilized. And after those first 2 to 3 months is typically what I'm saying, 2 to 3
Reed,
months.
can I ask you a question real quick? What, if you don't mind, you can share or not, but I want to get a little more into what you're like. What do you have a flat fee for the acquisition fee for those of us who are actively purchasing and picking up co-living? Because we're doing the same thing, an acquisition fee. We're putting a ton of time and energy and effort into these deals. So like, what do you typically charge up for an acquisition fee?
So I guess I don't label it as an acquisition fee, but it's kind of that, right?
Yeah.
It's like finding it, overseeing the renovations,
Management fee, or yeah.
So usually it's about $8,000.
Okay, cool.
Per deal. Yep, exactly. And operations.
Perfect.
And that's anybody that, if you guys are doing the same thing, anybody that has an issue with that $8,000, you probably don't want to be in business with.
Yeah.
Yep. Jesse knows.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, dude, you're getting the benefit
Makes sense, man.
of a lot of things. And and nobody works for free in those first 2 to 3 months. So I'm right there with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually had a PMP potential partner that I talked to for a while, and I won't name her, but she's like, "Oh, I need 51% of the partnership." I was like, "What?" I was like, "No, I would never do that. It's my deal. I did all the leg work and all the, building all the relationships to get the deal, getting under contract, all the negotiations, all the work, and we're gonna be the operators. Why would I give you 51% equity? It makes no sense to me, but people are funny.
Exactly. Especially because, if you could go replace them with private money lender and you're paying $700 a month to a private money lender, you own 100% of that deal, right? They're an equity partner and they get the benefit of the pass-through depreciation, the cash flow. Like obviously when you exit, they're getting the appreciation on that. And we're literally creating a business within the real estate. So there's a premium on that they wouldn't get either way. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Well, looks like you got a new partner here in the chats, Andrea. Awesome, bro. Congrats. That's cool. Andrea's awesome too. But yeah, I love it, man.
No, we never did. I was saying, I'm just gonna tell you, I jumped on because you were having Reed on, and I've been presented with a few of his opportunities from him as the operator. But I, as a PMP, I bet PML, I bet on the the jockey, not the horse. I
Yes.
didn't know Reed. The few people that I asked if they knew Reed didn't know Reed either.
I know
So,
Reed. No.
I didn't have a problem with it. But then boom, I see,
Yes.
I said, oh, well, Lance knows Reed. Lance is, so let me jump on this podcast to meet him. So nice to meet you, Reed. And now I know, yeah, you're a smart dude, very legit. So it's all good.
Yes. Awesome.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. We got to meet in Kalispell, Montana for the at community camp. And that was amazing. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out just in case, you guys should definitely connect and
I definitely
I
will.
can,
Cause, yeah,
yeah, there you go. Cool.
So,
Perfect.
hey,
Great.
so Reed, man, I just because there's so much to fit in, and I appreciate
Mhm.
everybody jumping in. But if we can save all the questions to the last, Reed has been nice enough to give up his
Yeah.
time for us, man, and he's got so much knowledge. So Reed, you're kind of walking us through the sub two deal, right? You get the deal, you retain the deal, but now kind of walk us through what your thoughts are when you do that, right? So, hey, I've got this property. You need to, start building out the rooms. What are your thoughts there? And then let's talk about how you actually get this thing built out and then occupied, and then how do you manage it, right? That's why I'm trying to get through all that stuff because I know that there's a ton left to talk about.
You bet. You bet. No, I appreciate that. So you got the deal. It's under contract. Actually, Ed here, he actually was in the chat. We actually just recently did a deal, and we're 3 weeks into it. And I need to send you some photos, Ed. But we're done with the build out. So what what happens is,
Nice.
yeah. So what happens is, as soon as that happens, I'm passing off, the listing information, everything to my team. They're getting the utilities turned on. They're getting there we go. I like it. Appreciate it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I need to catch up with you. So yeah, they're getting the utilities turned on. They're getting the listings created. And then from that point, I'm either, I'm doing a few things. We've already walked the property. We've already have a plan for where the bedrooms are going to go. A big part of getting started, I would say from that point to kind of go into the details there is the prep work involved to make sure that your construction crew is not making a huge mess. Pretty much immediately, they're getting started with framing out the bedrooms. So we're talking about 2x4s, really everywhere that you're framing out these rooms. They're getting things set up. Like after they frame out the bedrooms, they're running the electrical through there. After the electrical's done, and this is several days and stuff, but after the electrical is done, they're putting up drywall, and then from there it's mud, texturing, paint, trimming doors, locks, and then you're pretty much there as far as the actual like framing out the bedrooms. It's going to be a lot more involved if you're framing out a garage because you're going to have to think about ventilation, ductwork, things like that. So there's a little bit more involved there. But thankfully, I have a really great team that I have one GC, and then I have obviously my crew, and I've set up my crew where I'm not overly reliant on one person, and you don't have to. You trust everybody a little bit, but you don't trust any one person a lot, right?
Mhm.
And so, my crew, I've set it up where everybody has their own tools. So you're not paying this guy for day labor and he's expecting a lot more per day, whatever else, and you're not putting him with somebody else and you're worried about someone stealing and walking off with their tools, right? So you kind of a lot of things that kind of go into like managing those labor costs as much as you can, but also just letting people kind of specialize in what they specialize in. And we have one guy that's particularly good with electrical. Pretty much anybody can do framing on the team, but then there's people that are really really good with like the mudding and the painting and stuff because a little bit more a little more of an art form rather than just hammering on something. And so I'd say the first 3 weeks or so, depending on the extent of the renovation, is going to be primarily that. And you can be marketing it along the way, whatever else, but you pretty much want to wait until you have those, at least the bedrooms done before you start getting tenants in there or whatever else. But in the meantime, ordering furniture, as soon as they finish up the bedrooms, having them set up all the furniture. And then we have like a bit of a punch list of, okay, what things are required for us to get this fully operational, but also like what things can we be doing to like extend the life of the hot water heater, of this or of that. So whatever else, even though we're looking for pretty turnkey type stuff, you want to try to get the most life out of whatever, existing appliances are there too. So
Love that.
Quick question, Reed. So like on as you go in and you're getting ready to build this out, do you have an average kind of bedroom size that you're looking at, 120 square feet? Obviously there's a closet. Do you go with like an average closet size? And do you ever run into any issues with like ingress egress, right? I know some places are, got to have a door, got to have a window, right? So
yeah. So, I mean, it's going to be how you want to build it out, right? So like I prefer for there, like you said, to have an egress window, to have a standard size closet. I'm blanking on the actual, how many inches the closet is. But
no, you don't have to go that deep, man, but just,
yeah,
yeah, like, hey, it's about 120 square foot bedroom. We have like a standard
yeah.
size closet,
Eight,
right?
8 by 10 would be the smallest I would typically try to go for. They're not all going to be exactly the same size, but yeah, it's roughly about that same square footage.
Okay.
And you can, of course, adjust the price point for the bedroom depending on kind of how large it is, of course. So,
All right, we gotta start taking some questions, Damon. Reed's got a kind of a hard stop at 7, so we're gonna be respectful of his time, guys. Jesse, come on up here. Ask your question. She's been waiting patiently for a half an hour, poor baby.
Hi, Reed. Thanks so much. I raised my hand because I knew I'd forget if I didn't. So I have 2 questions and I'll make it quick. Thank you so much for all the wonderful information you've given us tonight. It's been very helpful. So the first question is I think easier to answer. Do you furnish all your bedrooms or do you leave some of them unfurnished so that people can bring their own furniture? And if you do that, what is your like kind of percentage of rooms that you leave open unfurnished?
great. Yeah, great question.
Thank you.
Echoing a bit. Yeah, I usually go ahead and do half because, like you said, there's going to be some people that bring in their own stuff, and if they aren't going to use that bed, they can move it to the garage or we can move it to another room. But it's typically about half, and it's for my model, very basic, bedroom furniture. Nothing absorbent, and I think that a lot of people, especially in this space, are trying to almost inch into it being an Airbnb. And it's like, I make it very clear, this is not an Airbnb. There's going to be a mattress protector on it, but bring your own sheets kind of thing. But I try to, for my model, I cater to, young working men, generally speaking. I don't do pets or kids or couples. For my model, I try to set the bar very low. Like, hey, it's a bedroom. There's a reason why it costs, what it costs and everything. It's a very nice house. It's very nice for what you're going to get for the price point. But I don't want to set the expectation that this is going to be an Airbnb either, because obviously the costs that go along with that. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then the second question, this one's a little far-fetched, but it was asked to me earlier today. So I just have to see if I can get an answer. Like Lance said, we're looking for a PMP right now, PML on our deal. And one of the questions that he brought up was that he has a friend and it's sober living. So there's a difference between the demographic, but I mean, mental health affects us all, right? So somebody sadly took their own life in that house, and the shit show, for lack of a better word, with insurance is just a nightmare. And I get that that's a one-off, but like my point is like, what type of insurance and liability sort of safeguards are you putting up? I know you can't ever anticipate anything happening, but if you could elaborate on that, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, you're dealing with people, right? So it's just like you do something like this or like sober living long enough, it's like you see some stuff, right? So it's not not a uncommon. I mean, everybody, we all have 100% of dying, a percent chance of dying at some point either way. So it's a very good question. So as far as the insurance goes, and I don't want to speak out of turn because there's people that are going to be much better at explaining this, but there's obviously, especially with subject to, there's obviously going to be just basic homeowners insurance, which is just going to be like replacement value type of insurance. And then you can do like more of like a general liability policy to go over kind of everything else. And, so that's what I've done is just like general liability. And then, as we grow, we're looking more into like an umbrella policy that doesn't, I'm not overpaying for the insurance that I'm already paying for, right? With the subject to and kind of the underlying as well. So I'd say, it's probably a combination of those things, but if you can require that your renters have just a basic liability insurance, like renters insurance, I should say. And then B, yeah, just some sort of general liability to kind of fill in those gaps for anything that's kind of specific like that. So.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Hey Reed,
Perfect.
man, I wanna ask one more question of you because you've talked about everything, but I'd love to talk about once you get it all done and now it's time to lease, right? But like what type of property management system are you using? Are you using like a turbo tenant or a door loop or like how are you managing it all? Because I'm sure it can get overwhelming, right?
Yeah, I'm primarily using it's called Buildium, which is so like building, except for IUM, Buildium, and that's primarily, I mean, and obviously if you're using Pad Split, use Pad Split. But for me, Buildium has been good because it's really good for managing multiple units. And even though if I have 25 properties, but I have, let's say, it'll be creeping up on 100 and 60 rooms or 170, whatever it is. It's like an apartment complex. And so I like Buildium for that. I run everything through it as far as, you can run your tenant screening through it, applications. You can have renters insurance on it. They can report their rental payments to the credit union if they want to build their credit through it. So there's a lot of benefits, and then there's an online portal, so that helps as well. But yeah, I'll leave it at that. But that's a good starting place, and then of course it's going to be a lot more involved when you're talking about like what systems for marketing and stuff like that too. So
what do you pay for that, if you don't mind me asking? What's like the monthly cost on something like that?
well, it grows with you as you grow.
Does
So
it? Oh, okay. Got it.
Yeah. So I mean, I think initially it was like maybe 89, and now I think it's closer to 400. I'm not sure.
Okay.
So yeah.
That's awesome. Did you say something about your having your renters carry their own insurance? Did I hear you say that right?
Yeah, you can do that through that
That's
platform as well.
awesome, bro. We were talking about that earlier today. Okay, cool. I don't want to take up any more time. Jason.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good, man.
Appreciate you taking the time to do this. Had a couple of quick questions. Number one, bedroom furniture. I've heard some people that are doing co-living say they're only doing common area furniture now because when people tend to move their own furniture into the bedroom, you have less turnover. Have you experienced anything with that, or?
Yeah, I do common area furnishings, but think about like coffee shop style, seating and things like that, where it's a place to sit and it's comfortable, but you're not so comfortable that your brother-in-law is sleeping on the couch for 3 weeks, not paying rent or whatever, some random person as far as that goes. And then, is that what you're referring to as a common area furniture?
Yeah, I've heard that they're not really necessarily setting up a living room with TV and everything because that's where more conflict comes in when people don't want, one person wants to watch one thing versus the other one, that, it's more dining area or place they can sit and work on a laptop, something like that. But then they're not furnishing the actual bedrooms because when people are moving their own, beds or whatever in there, they tend to stay longer and not look at it as kind of like a Airbnb or, a weekly rental in a sense.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of the same way. Like, I mean, people are going to find things to argue about regardless when you're dealing with, a good amount of people. And you're dealing with any business with people, right? Sometimes problems are not problems to be entirely solved, but more of like a dichotomy to be managed. It's like property management is called property management for a reason, because you're not done with it, right? And so it's like, I don't think you're ever, you can do a lot to hopefully eliminate, a lot of things that you said wrong, because property management is done.
Talking to my wife. No, we're getting a couch.
Oh, okay.
And a
I do
coffee table.
I'll
A
do
couch and a coffee
couches
table?
in
Okay.
places, yeah, but it's more, it's not a place that you're going to see people take a nap, and
Yeah.
um, I would
Not a
rather
big
get,
sectional.
no, not generally, no. I would rather get a couch that A, I was able to have it delivered immediately, and B, I'm not going to be sad if I have to replace it if something happens, right? And I would just, when we're talking about furniture, I would just make sure that if you do have tenants that bring in their own furniture and they're going to ask you about it, you just want to tread very carefully, because you don't know if they're bringing in bed bugs. You don't know if they're bringing in somebody's couch that has, a cat, and then somebody has allergies or whatever
Yeah.
else. You just want to tread lightly. So
That's a great point.
Yeah. And then the other question I had was, Lance was asking about egress. Do you ever consider putting in doors where there may be only one bed or one window in a bedroom, but maybe, a door with a glass window? But I've just heard that you can kind of generate a higher rent for having a private access into the room versus, having to walk through the house.
it's a really good question. I'm closing on it today. I hope I closed on it today. We'll see if it funded today, tomorrow. But I'm actually creating an efficiency out of one of my houses where there's that outdoor access, and it's like a small apartment complex within each of the rooms. And so I haven't done that so much in the past, but it is something that kind of looking into, because I do notice that because you're not just selling somebody on a lower price point room, right? You're selling them on the idea of living with other people, of course, too, which comes with a cost, which comes with, again, expectation setting, on the front end as well. And so I have a few that have private entrances, but I haven't like, I guess, until like more recently, like added the doors, the external doors, to make that happen. But I do think there's added value there for sure. So.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Good questions, man. That was actually Damon that was talking about the egress, but that's okay. I'm gonna give Damon some credit.
Sorry, buddy.
Sweet, man. We got time maybe for one more question, and then we're gonna shut her down. When we're gonna be respectful of Mr. Clanahan's time here. He's a busy man. Anyone else have one last question? Going once, Jason.
Yeah,
Go
I have
ahead.
one more.
Go ahead.
Do you do any type of, like, I've heard some people do like a monthly pizza party or something where they send pizzas in or something to kind of get some sense of community?
I don't personally, and that's actually one distinction I didn't get to make earlier that I glossed over, is like Sam Wiegert and his group. I would say that they are more focused on, and I think I did this initially. They are more focused on solving for community, right? Which has its place. We talked about mental health. I mean, and I'm not trying to downplay that. At the same time, it's hard to scale, right? And so, I feel like you can either solve for community in a big way and have that programming through there, especially a lot of sober livings. There's people that are living in house, and there's a lot of programming that happens around that. But I feel like the problem that I'm more solving for is affordability than community nowadays. And so I think that you can do some of both. It is hard to scale because, I mean, Sam Wiegert and his group is like, they're taking applications and they kind of want them to be maybe entrepreneurial, and they want them to be a certain way. And all this is like awesome. But to do that across 170 or 180 or, 200 rooms, very challenging. So I think that you can do both, but that's kind of my take on it, is like, I want to be a solid guy. Like I said, I feel like because we do, we screen them, we're doing, just young working, men, individuals, that kind of helps forgive a lot of sins in that regard. And that's just my particular niche. But because of that, I feel like the likelihood that there's going to be as much drama is much lower. But if you have a male and a female, and this guy has a kid, and whatever else, and you're trying to create community, it would become a lot. So I would just say, if anybody's getting into this, if you kind of figure out who your avatar is, then it's going to be much easier to optimize your marketing for that particular person, if that makes sense too. So.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Booyah. Bam. Man, Reed, you're awesome, man. You're a rock star. Thank you so much for joining us, bro. You got anything you want to close with? Any book recommendations or any kind of wisdom that you would like to impart on our viewers?
I have a couple of, I guess, just small things that I'll kind of add here to send us off on. And I appreciate everybody's questions and everything. And so the things I would probably highlight if you're looking to be an operator in this space is that, like, you got to know yourself, in the sense that, things happen every day. Are you somebody that can just take an information in, and it's a situation, and boom, 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 what are our options? So I would just say, if you're really going to do this, like, what's your emotional fitness look like, right? Are you able to handle a bit of chaos while you do all this stuff? B would be, you got to have vision, right? So I think that really, obviously without vision, people perish, right? And so you got to have vision. And it's sometimes, if you're starting your first property, there's a crappy situation that happens, you get your first 2 or 3 people in there, you got to kick 1 or 2 people out, get new people in there, whatever else. It's really hard, if you're newer, to see past the current circumstances, whatever you're dealing with. This is true with any business. But to be able to see 2, 3, 6 months down the road and go, you know what, if I stay the course and I get better returns than anybody else can out in the market, and I'm solving a problem, it's like, I got to be able to see past what's the most immediate right here. And then lastly, I would just say, the more that people are getting into this space, the more that, there's going to be different ways of doing it. And so I just lastly just say, figure out who you are and how you fit into this space, right? And kind of figure out who you're marketing to. And I think that helps you optimize to be able to actually have a way to systemize who you're looking for and what you're trying to do. So.
Wow. Great information, man. You're a rock star. Like I said, thank you so much. Reed, where can people find you and reach out to you? What's a good place for them to find you?
Well, I would say for now, NACO, so our Facebook group, the National Association of Co-Living Operators, and we do a podcast every Sunday. You can come in, drop your deals, learn from other people, learn from other operators, and so we're, it's very rudimentary as far as the podcast goes, but we're getting that kicked off. And yeah, if you want to reach out, great. I can't promise I'm going to be able to get to everybody. We've got a lot to manage right now, but if you do reach out, I welcome it. And obviously I'm happy to chat with people that are really looking to get into this space. So
Absolutely. All right, man. Thank you so much for your time, bro. We appreciate you. You have a great evening. I'll be reaching out to you soon.
excellent.
Hey, thanks, Reed.
Thank you all.
We appreciate you, man.
You bet. Have a
Yeah.
great evening.
Thanks, everyone.